Let's speak to a Brexiteer Conservative commentator, Lee Harris, who joins me now. Thanks for coming to today's News Talk TNT, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
You're in better shape than the Conservatives. I know this isn't the main thing we're talking about, but what's going on? I predicted, here's me now, I told you so before the event. I predicted 99 to 165 would be the outcome in seats for the Conservatives. Someone's saying 98 now. Obviously, this is all speculative. Where do you think the Conservatives are heading in the next election?
I think that is a solid prediction, Lembit. I've been saying the same thing for many, many months now, but I've been saying less than 100 seats if they're lucky. It's been an absolute disgrace. I mean, they are essentially, I think most of them have given up now anyway. I think they're going to be obliterated at the next election without any doubt. And I think that is also forming a lot of people's opinions of how they're going to vote, mine included. My view is why would you reward such failure? And I think the mood of the country is almost down to a hatred of the party. I think people just be fed up of being lied to, Lembit. It's just, especially if you look at the immigration figures, I think that's one of the biggest things that wound me up the most is constantly being told by the Conservatives that they were looking to reduce immigration. I'm very pro legal immigration. I think done controlled and targeting skills, which is what we were promised, using the new Australian points-based system, is a good thing for this country. But I think it's very, very evident that pretty much since they got into office, they've not done anything of the sort. Sorry, since the Brexit vote went through, or since we officially left the European Union, they've done nothing of the sort. In fact, I think one of the first things that Boris Johnson did was lower the threshold lower the salary threshold for people coming into the UK. So there's been absolutely no effort made to target skills or use this new system properly. And of course, we now have 700,000 net coming to the country, which is just simply not sustainable. It's partly why we have a housing crisis.
And all of this under a Conservative Party that got elected because it was going to be tough on illegal immigration. Extraordinary. Yeah. I got to declare an interest. My parents came here as migrants because of the war. Had they been sent back to the nation of Estonia at the time, there's a very good chance they'd have been liquidated, killed by the Soviet system. Yeah. So they weren't really economic migrants, they were political migrants. So I haven't got an objection to migration per se, but I do have an objection to a political party that says we are going to be measured on bringing migration under control and then presiding over a record number of migrants coming into the country in 2023. This situation doesn't seem recoverable. Somebody suggested to me, Lee, that the best policy they could have is the whole of the cabinet could get in a boat and go east.
I think they're already doing it by the sounds of it. I don't know how many MPs have already stood down or signalled they're going to stand down. They've given up. And rightly so. And it's the sheer arrogance of it. That's what's got me. Is they've still had even up until I'd say probably maybe in the last 12 months, they've had an opportunity to at least try and do something about this, and they've done nothing. They could have. I even thought up till recently that even changing the leader again, however ridiculous that may sound, especially when they're pretty much guaranteed to, I think Professor John Curtis said they have a 99% chance of losing the next election. I actually think that's 100%. So if you're going to lose anyway, why not roll the dice once more? I don't think it would have done any more damage than they're already going to receive. But I honestly will be surprised if there is much of a party left over at the end of it. I even hear, I just could not believe this when I saw this last week, that David Cameron may well come back into the fold a little bit more than he is now to help recover the party, to stop it moving to the right after it's been completely obliterated. I just think that there is for one of the oldest parties in the world, oldest political parties in the world, I genuinely believe there is a chance that they may not exist. There'll be nothing more than a student debating club by the end of it.
We'll come to the other story in just a moment after the break. You do remind me of something that a former ship's captain, Steve Mallett, who lives in the southeast of England, said to me about the Border Patrol ship which was based, it may have been in Margate. The Border Patrol ship was known locally as the Eternal Flame. Do you know why? Do you know why, Lee?
Go on.
Because it never goes out. Anyway, we'll come back. I wish it was my joke. Thank you, Steve Mallet, if you're watching. I always attribute it to him. After the break, we're going to talk about a rather strange swastika incident in central London with Lee. You're listening to the Sonia Poulton Show. I'm just standing in for her today, right here in today's News Talk. See you in a minute.
Free from the App Store or Google Play. Today's News Talk. This is TNT Radio.
Hi, welcome back. It's Lembit Opik standing in for Sonia Poulton right here on today's News Talk. In this half hour, we're going to be speaking to Niall Fraser, north of the border in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, to find out what is going on about hate crime. What can you say? What can you not say? How offended must you be before the person who offends you goes to prison? Well, all of that with Niall in a short while. But before that, an equally strange encounter between a woman, the police, a pro-Palestinian demonstration and a swastika in central London. To explain this conundrum, we still have Lee Harris. Lee, explain, if you can, what happened in central London at this demo.
It was a shocking incident, Lembit. This extremely troubling incident was filmed by a member of the public in London at the anti-Israel march on Saturday, just gone, in London. And the footage shows an understandably distressed Jewish woman complaining to the Met police about Nazi symbols on placards carried by anti-Israel demonstrators. And an extremely patronising Met police officer who was busy drinking his coffee and looked like he couldn't care less told her that everything needs to be taken in context. Now, where have we heard that before? And the Jewish woman, rightly challenged the officer, saying, I quote, "Why is a swastika not immediately anti-Semitic? Why does it need context?" And actually offered to take the officer to show him the people on the march who were carrying these placards bearing swastikas. But he insisted that he had to remain at his post and said there was other officers throughout the protest that could help. But he even had the nerve to say to this lady, "What exactly are you confused about?" And even after 5 solid months of watching the Met's shameful two-tier weak policing, I still honestly couldn't believe my eyes. It genuinely shocked me to the core. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty angry after watching it. It's literally all I've been thinking about since this horrific incident unfolded on Saturday. The police officers, just a striking point, the police officer's body language was awful. He was more interested in his cup of coffee than with the Jewish woman who was clearly distressed and alarmed. And what was most staggering of all was, you've got to bear in mind that this was an anti-Israel protest happening in London, as it has done almost every single weekend for the past 5 to 6 months. So there's your context. And on every single march, we have seen and heard vile, hateful, terrorist-supporting, anti-Semitic images and chanting. And if you see Nazi symbols in this setting, it doesn't take a genius to know that you don't. There's absolutely no need for context. Literally everybody knows what that means. So to hear him say to a distressed Jewish woman that the swastika had to be taken into context made me feel physically sick. I genuinely couldn't get my head around this. It was a shocking state of affairs, Lembit.
It's interesting. One of the points that I make repeatedly is to dislike Benjamin Netanyahu's politics is not to hate Jews or to be anti-Semitic. And yet, it's very hard to understand how anyone could suggest that pointing a swastika quite clearly towards the Israeli state is anything other than anti-Semitism, essentially. Wherever you stand in this debate, and I have to say, I just think Benjamin Netanyahu's performance is gobsmacking. And the way the West, for a long time, tried to resist calling for a ceasefire was gobsmacking. A swastika isn't ambiguous, Lee. It's not an ambiguous statement, is it?
No. And the Met have form on this. You probably remember when the Met made excuses for the word jihad, which was being used in a violent context by an Islamist extremist group called Hizb ut-Tahrir. And this group was later proscribed as a terrorist organisation in January this year. I mean, that was bad enough. But I just kept thinking, this is completely mad. Why is this police officer not at least showing an interest? Even if he didn't agree with the incident, he just didn't care. It just looked like he didn't care, I should say. But I do want to say that even though this individual officer was rude and genuinely uninterested, I still don't completely blame him. I blame Mark Rowley, Sadiq Khan, and our painfully weak politicians. In my view, Mark Rowley should get the sack. He's an absolute disgrace. Every single week, these marches get worse, and there is a reason for that. The Met have mostly stood by and done nothing. They've directly empowered the mob, and they think they're untouchable, and effectively they are. This is why we're seeing an increase in these horrific incidents. But this wasn't the only incident I saw this weekend. I'm sure anyone watching the marches would have seen the same thing. There was open support for Hamas, open chanting for genocide, chanting. I actually saw a young child chanting in support of Houthi terrorists. There was a protester wearing full military gear, holding a riot shield, a plethora of anti-Semitic placards. And it is just a disgrace. The police have lost control of the streets and they are scared. They do not know what they're doing.
I have a slightly different interpretation. I agree with everything apart from the last comment. I think they've lost control of their narrative. I think they don't know what they're supposed to be doing anymore. It seems to me the great offender in this thing is Sadiq Khan, who is technically responsible for the police, and he blames the police. It's like unbelievable to me, his lack of personal responsibility for a Metropolitan Police Authority has never been more besmirched in its entire existence. And I think there's another example of this. When Black Lives Matter was parading and prancing around in central London, breaking every one of these fatuous COVID restrictions, the police just let them get on with it. But then when those who were concerned about the COVID lockdown and the jabs, which I loathe now because I got an injury myself from them, when they were demonstrating, they came down on them like a ton of bricks. The police have completely belied their impartiality, it seems to me. And to me, that's the crime here.
I agree, and it's political as well. I mean, the other thing that I found striking from looking on social media this weekend is if you look around the world, almost every other police force deal with these marches better than our own police. I mean, the French don't mess about, as we know. They took a hard line right from the off, and they ban these marches, and they robustly police anyone that takes part. I mean, even the Canadian police, I was really surprised by this one. The Canadian police in Toronto were filmed dealing with these protests way more robustly than our pathetic police. It just feels like we're a global embarrassment. And I just cannot understand why they won't apply the law fairly. And it's been very, very obvious that they aren't applying the law fairly. And it feels... I think the term two-tier policing is absolutely spot on. But it's not just... I genuinely wanted to bring this into the conversation. It's not just the incident. What shocked me, after I wasn't the first person to post this on Twitter by far, but certainly on my post, which did get quite a bit of attention, I was actually really shocked by a lot of the responses. The responses on social media have been vile. The amount of people who happen to have Palestinian flags in their bio that were defending the use of the swastika and being openly anti-Semitic was shocking. That's partly why I haven't stopped thinking about this. I feel naive that there are so many people in this. You can't tell exactly where these people are from. I think a bulk of them were from the UK, but they may well not have been. But seeing a snippet of that really, really shocked me. And it's basically what I've been thinking about. I don't want much, Lembit. I just want to live in a country where the police uphold the law without fear or favour, don't make excuses for Islamic extremists, treat absolutely everybody the same, and that they understand what a swastika is. I don't think that's much to ask.
Yeah, it's interesting. The swastika itself was hijacked from, as one of the Skippy says, I think it was a Hindu symbol originally, but it was hijacked, and the swastika has no different meaning in many ways. Especially, it's portrayed in a certain specific way, which can only be the Nazi symbol, because the Hindu symbol looks a little bit different.
That was my point. That was my reaction. Was why would you make that point? Why, when you're looking at this incident happening and unfolding, seeing a Jewish lady at this anti-Israel march being, told what the context of a swastika, why would you then defend it by saying, it's an old Buddhist symbol and stuff like that? It's diversionary tactic. I genuinely don't understand it. It made me very sad. I'm not going to lie.
Thank you very much. We're going to discuss this more, I think, next weekend if we get the chance. Lee Harris, good luck with the Conservatives. There's nothing wrong with their election hope. Well, there's nothing wrong with their election hopes, so the miracle wouldn't fix. Who will you be voting for out of interest?
At the moment, as it stands, I may well vote for Reform, purely to send them a message.
You never know, they could form the government at this rate. Thanks very much. That's Lee Harris.